Hello, many thanks for joining us. This is Women's Voice and my name is Selikem Acolatse Apaloo. You're welcome to the program that deals with issues that relate to women and issues that address issues, the program that addresses issues affecting women in our society. Today on the program, we're going to be looking at a very serious problem that many women continue to face, not all over the world, but also here in Ghana. We're looking at obstetric fistula. Imagine not being able to control your urine or your feces whenever you feel the urge to empty your bowels. But worse, imagine that you develop this problem after childbirth, after doing one of the most important things in this world, that is bringing another life into this world. Imagine that you develop this after having a child. This is the harsh reality that many women, not just in Ghana, but all over the world, are still dealing with. And today on the program, we're seeking to educate the public about this problem, but we are also seeking to understand what we can do as a nation to curb this problem and improve it as it is. For us in the studio today, joining us for this particular discussion, we have a man who has been working in this field for some time and understands the intricacies of this medical condition, and he'll be helping us with some education, and then we'll be looking at some of the ways that we can prevent this issue moving forward. My guest in the studio is Dr. Gabriel Ganyaglo. He's Senior Obstetrician Gyaenacologist at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. He's also a fistula surgeon joining us. You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're doing this on the back of the recently commemorated Obstetric Fistula Day, celebrated all over the world, commemorated all over the world. You're welcome once again. When we talk about fistula or obstetric fistula, what exactly do we mean?
Yeah, I think we are all used to having the urge to go and pee, or having the urge to go and move your bowel, as they put it. And then you go. You get the urge, you go. So you walk around very decent and very dry. Now you have a situation where you don't feel like going to urinate. You don't feel like going to move your bowel. They're just leaking on their own. They just come in without any control whatsoever. And I like to liken it with drilling a hole under your poly tank at home. You find water will go in and just continue to come out. Now, this is the situation you have for women who are suffering from obstetric fistula. It just happens to be an abnormal communication between the reservoir for urine and the birth canal. And the reservoir for urine, in popular parlance, is called the bladder. The reservoir for feces is the rectum, and so when you have an abnormal channel forming between the rectum and the birth canal, or between the birth canal and the reservoir for urine, the contents of these reservoirs just continue to trickle down the birth canal, and the woman has absolutely no control over them.
Why?
Usually, I like to use this to demonstrate.
Please go ahead.
So we have the pelvic girdle, or this is part of the bone of the waist, and then you have soft tissues inside. One of them would be the womb itself. I'm putting that out, and this is just a dummy, by the way. Now this is the shape of the reservoir for urine, known as the bladder, and then the reservoir for feces, which is the rectum. All of it is in there. Now during pregnancy, you have the baby ready to come out, and all of it is going through very well defined channels and architecture made by God, and the baby is supposed to come through this and out of the birth canal.
Right.
So as you can see, the size of this baby and the relative capacity of this pelvic girdle makes a lot of difference whether this baby can come through successfully and smoothly, or whether the baby cannot come out. So we have found that there are several scenarios to developing obstetric fistula, but the typical scenario is where the pelvis is still growing. It has not finished growing. By nature's own design, it should grow to a certain size with certain dimensions, and there's a lot of engineering work into delivery.
Right.
Most of it, science has not been able to understand it fully, but that is the way it is with nature. So if the pelvis has not finished growing and is still growing, and a baby comes along, and the baby happens to be bigger than the diameter or the cavities here, then that baby has a big challenge coming out of the pelvis. So when the baby goes and gets stuck in there, it is pressing on all the tissues, the soft tissues. As I said, one is the reservoir for urine, the other is a reservoir for rectum, so a reservoir for feces. So you find that it keeps pressure in there, and over a couple of hours, then all those tissues simply die.
They die?
Yes, they simply just die off. And once they die off, the result is a hole that forms. And some of that connection will go to the reservoir for urine, and some of it will go to the reservoir for feces. And so you have these two, which are supposed to be kept separate, now coming through a common channel, which is a birth canal. So we have to recognize that those who usually go or start delivery very early, in their teens especially, maybe 15 to 24 years, that is where you find one of the peaks of obstetric fistula, because in that category, not all pelvises have finished growing. And so even the average size baby has a lot of difficulty coming through. And once it's stuck, it has to be relieved by an emergency cesarean section. So when you are somewhere that this cesarean section is not readily available or it's not easily accessible, then the baby is stuck in there for too long, and then this is where the fistula develops. So you find that obstetric fistula will be very common in areas where teenage pregnancy is common, where the social esteem of women is rather low, and they are less engaged in formal education. They are more into resigning themselves into wifely and household chores. Then you find that their ambition is just to have a baby, make a family, satisfy the husband. That kind of environment is also typically where the road networks are poor, and you are unlikely to have facilities nearby that can offer an emergency cesarean section. We all know that health workers would prefer to be in major centers for very obvious reasons. And so in the setting where there is a lot of poverty and poor social infrastructure, you have a very fertile ground for obstetric fistula to develop. Mind you, these girls are also not in formal education, so they don't see the value of going for antenatal care. Now, the mother was delivered that way. The mother delivered her in that same setting. All the siblings have several deliveries that way, and they get away with it. So it becomes the norm, and it's very, very usual. So to talk of hospital, then you are seen as the weaker one or the less confident woman. So everybody wants to make it, and they sit at home until it's too late. And quite often, yes, they still succeed to get the baby out, but at that time, the baby is dead. If they are lucky to survive, then you find that they realize they can't feel that they want to pee, and they can't feel that they want to move their bowels. It just continues to trickle, and it continues to, then they start smelling. Now, when that happens, the husbands are usually the first to abandon them, and so they take them back to the parents if they are still there. And then when they get to their parents' homes, usually nobody wants to tolerate them in the family setting, so they have a secluded place where they can put them. In fact, they are treated as outcasts within their own fold. And they themselves begin to look and feel rejected. They feel very depressed, and they are not very happy with life. Some will try to commit suicide. A few have been reported to have considered that. So it is that depressing for them. Even those who don't go to this extreme realize that they no longer have their menses. And then some of them cannot walk the normal way. They start limping because once the baby is stuck in there, nerves are also compressed. So they lose sensation in some of the legs. So they walk and drag their feet along. And so you find that it's a complex mix of complications that they go through.
Right.
Meanwhile, this is absolutely no fault of theirs. They were married off sometimes very early. they had no say in the choice, they had no say in the marriage negotiations, and then they just find themselves pregnant, as every normal woman will expect to be, and they have such high expectations of life and childbirth, only to end up like this. And so we should appreciate that it is not their fault, it is not their making. To a large extent, it's the failure of the health system to take care of them. It's a lack of social infrastructure within the settings, and so they are just victims of a failed system. So all of us must understand it in this light and empathize with them. Now, if you know of any or have come into contact with any, it is my advice that you encourage them to seek care in a hospital. Mind you, in the setting I have described, superstition is rife. So once you are going to deliver and it doesn't come out smoothly, then you have been unfaithful to your husband. You've gone behind him, you've committed a sin, the gods are punishing you, and so we bring religion into it. So you are cursed. And once you are cursed, nobody touches you again. So it's a very complex mix of situations that all feed into obstetric fistula.
You talk about this happening to women whose reproductive systems have not fully developed.
Yes, that's a common.
But what do you, that's a commonest, but what do you say to people who say that, well, there are areas where there's teenage pregnancy, but they're all fine? So what are you talking about?
Super. I think there are more teenage pregnancies in America than you find in Ghana or in sub-Saharan Africa, but there's no fistula in America. Why? Because when the teenage mother is in labor, emergency cesarean section is just next door. It's readily available. And so in a setting for hours where the labor has obstructed and then there's a delay in procuring the cesarean section, you are bound to end up close to fistula, if not ultimately.
Is it possible that this could also happen to older women? Yes,
and the more babies you have, the bigger the subsequent deliveries. So you may have your first child that came through smoothly, the second may, the third, fourth, fifth are likely to be bigger than the first two. So even for
this is just a natural...
It's just a natural scheme of things. So even for the same pelvic capacity that could deliver smoothly, baby 1, baby 2, baby 3 and 4 could become challenging. And these babies, sometimes their position is also not exactly the way it should be. The head may turn in a certain way, or you may not want, it should be well folded for you to come smoothly out. Any change in the baby's presentation will also cause it.
Right.
So older women can still get fistula.
So you're saying that the remedy here, when there's a situation like that, will be to have a cesarean session?
Yes, that's the remedy.
But the perception about the cesarean session being a negative thing is still very rife within our society.
Yes.
And people set out, women set out to ensure that no matter what it is, they will not go through the knife and they will deliver normally.
Yes, I agree with that position. And we as obstetricians always encourage normal birth. We always encourage it. And we leave cesarean section as a last resort. And one of that situation is when the baby cannot come through the pelvis. So it's one scenario where we will absolutely recommend a cesarean section. We will want you to deliver normally, but not at the expense of your life or not at the expense of the life of the baby. So yes, we do know that in our setting, some women frown on having a cesarean section done. But I think we have come very far in science. The techniques have been revised and advanced to a level where it is safe. And where you have an obstruction, where the baby is bigger than the mother and cannot come through, there is absolutely no reason why you should continue pushing. And mind you, these women can labor for 2 days, 3 days, sometimes up to 4 days, just waiting for the baby to come out.
It's not possible to forecast that this may happen to a mother depending on the size of the baby.
Sure.
And just opt for a cesarean session or prepare the mother for a cesarean session in that instance. And why is it not happening?
Perfect. Antenatal care offers us that avenue. So if you're pregnant and you stay at home, nobody knows what the baby is growing to become. Nobody knows the size of the baby. Often we can gauge the mother's height and do some clinical assessments compared to the size of the baby and say that, oh, this baby is not likely to make it normally. And so we offer cesarean section up front. We discuss with the mother and we offer cesarean section up front. Some will decline. We still give you a trial, but we are monitoring you and the vigilance is high, right? But if you stay at home, nobody knows your height. We don't know the size of the baby that is developing. And then you go into labor. Notoriously, labor will always start in the night. So access to the vehicle, some will even have to walk. They trek miles to get to the roadside to wait for the only vehicle in the village that is going to the next town. It is from the next town that they can board a bus to the nearest hospital. So if you have this situation or you are in such an environment, it is almost advisable that once you are pregnant, go to the hospital and have a midwife check your baby until it is time for delivery. And we almost getting 100% of our mothers going for antenatal care, but fewer than 60% will deliver in a hospital because of the traditional rules that come around birthing. So a lot of our people still want to deliver close to the oldest woman in the family or close to their mother or close to someone they know and can trust more. So you find that, and a lot of faith-based delivery practices are coming in. So some would like to go and deliver in the spiritual home. This has turned fistula into, or changed the demographics of fistula a bit.
How?
From where you find it mostly in very rural areas to a situation where even in major cities and towns you can find obstetric fistula. Within Accra, there is fistula. In Cape Coast, there is fistula. You name the capital cities in Ghana.
What are the demographics? What are the statistics like? How endemic
we are currently looking at about 1,300, uppermost 1,300 new cases every year. And this is work done by the Ghana Health Service and the UNFPA in 2015. This is the load we estimate that we are getting every year. Now, each year we are only able to repair about 200 fistulas.
What happens to the rest?
Very good question, and they are all out there. The difficulty is that fistula is hidden, so, and the patients are outcasts. So they are not in the communities, they are not among people that you can identify easily. So you need to actually organize a group or have volunteers who will know that such a person has a symptom or such a person is leaking urine, is always wet or is always by himself or is hiding. Sometimes they are the first to leave the house to the farm and stay in the farm till sunset, and they come back, they just sneak back in. Life is very miserable and people talk about them a lot. They can't go to the market, nobody buys their food, nobody buys their wares if they are selling. And even this continues sometimes after the repair. So it's difficult to find them unless you put resources into going to look for the cases, identify them, and then mobilize them into the hospitals. To start with, once they have fistula, they can't work, they are not earning anything, so they become very poor. They are almost relying on someone for food and for their basic needs. So it takes money, or it costs money to go out there, look for them, put them together, encourage them to come to hospital. And then it costs money to do the surgeries. So, and they stay in hospital after repair traditionally for about 2 weeks. They stay in hospital for about 2 weeks. So sometimes when they come, they have infections in the skin, their blood levels are low because they've been so malnourished. You have to bring them up a bit clinically. So you keep them about a week before you do the repair, making sure that because they stop drinking, fearing that when they drink, they will leak more, they stop drinking, and that sometimes makes it worse. So once they arrive in hospital, you also don't just go into doing surgeries for them. You have to bring them up, optimize their condition before you do the surgery. So in the end, they can stay in hospital up to about a month.
Before you get to that point, I want us to backtrack a little bit and start from the possibility of treatment.
Right.
That this is treatable.
Oh, it's very much treatable. 100% preventable and avoidable, and 100% treatable.
So there is a remedy which involves surgery. That's the only remedy available.
If we find them early, sometimes
So when you mean early, you mean
Now, soon after birth, within 3 weeks of delivery, if we find them and the hole is small,
right,
sometimes just passing a rubber tubing through the pee hole into the reservoir for urine, the urine drains out continuously and it allows the hole to heal by itself without surgery. So we put that rubber tubing in there and it stays for about 2 to 3 months and they can be healed without surgery, and that is cheaper. Okay, but we don't find them that early and it takes a while to see them. So if you're seeing them 3 years after the fistula, then there is no hope for that kind of remedy and you have to do surgery. And in my decade of fistula surgery, I have seen the oldest one in the Upper West region who had fistula for close to 70 years.
70 years?
Yes. We met her at 70. Oh, I think 40 years. We met her at 70. Fistula development, she was around 30. So she had it for about 40 years and was avoiding everybody. So she had adapted to life with fistula and was quite stable because, well, nobody will eat her food, so she's not cooking for anyone. She's not attending funerals. She's not attending birthday parties. She's not attending any ceremonies. So she's all by herself and on her own for 40 years.
What about family?
Family keeps them at a distance. They are treated as outcasts, so nobody goes near them, you know. And so this old lady suffered all this. And so when she came to us for repair, we were very surprised that she got motivated to come. If you've lived with it for 40 years, why are you coming? And her only words to us was, I want to go back to my maker dry. And this is how touching it can be to be working on fistula patients. Fortunately, her surgery was successful in one stage, and she got dry and went home very happy. You know, after 70, you've lived 40 years with fistula. I'm just wondering, what more? You know, so people are living in the communities for years with fistula because, one, they are supposed to be cursed by the gods. So there's no remedy. Once the gods have come in, then you are condemned to any form of treatment. So it is for us to educate the public.
But you say it is for us, but you are a health professional.
Yes.
And so if the person has such a complication after birth,
yes,
that health attendant who saw to the person should be able to let the person know that this is treatable.
Yes. You're assuming the person was seen by a health attendant. Half of the time they're on their own. And it's taking a lot of effort. The Ghana Health Service and its partners, particularly the UNFPA, have mobilized communities and educated people in the remotest parts of this country that alert them where they have found a fistula.
Is there a way in which we are roping in traditional birth attendants?
Some traditional birth attendants are helpful. In the past, we trained them to attend deliveries. But you see, up to a point, they are also now asking for more money, more resources. And then they also have challenges when they find a patient that they believe can deliver and it's not going well, and they can't recognize that things are not going well. What it takes to prevent fistula is a skilled person attending the delivery. A midwife knows exactly when this labor is not going to go well. When the midwife, that is, even if the person is delivering in a hospital or in a health facility or in a maternity home, when the midwives identify that, oh, this is not going well, this patient has to be delivered in a hospital, sometimes it takes hours to get to the nearest roadside for transportation to the health facility. And by the time they arrive, sometimes it's too late. So the traditional birth attendants, they used to have a role. We need to redefine their roles. We need to re-educate them. We need to encourage them to refer such patients. And when they bring the patients, it is for us to expedite the care. It is not unusual for women to queue for cesarean sections when we are in our peak season, all due to the level of capacity levels we have to deal with the numbers. You know, so sometimes the facilities themselves are just overwhelmed, and so they may arrive on time. They may arrive after a delay in coming to us, but then there's also delays in our facility itself. You see, but by and large, most city centers, maybe metropolitan areas, have specialists in almost all the facilities.
But the rural areas?
Rural areas are where we have a challenge. And we need to train more and deploy more into these areas. If you take, for instance, communities in the north, they are very few, but they are so widespread. Sometimes during the rainy season, you can't cross over to the next village. And so if a woman goes into labor in the night during the rainy season, for instance, I mean, you can only make do with a motorbike or maybe a truck. You know, a few times they've carried their pregnant women on wheelbarrows because that would be the quickest means to get them to the nearest facility for help. So we have very serious challenges with the absence of good roads, lack of ambulance services, and so fistula is with us.
Right, fistula is with us, unfortunately, but the awareness creation that you have been involved in over the years, what is the target group for this kind of awareness creation? What are we seeking to do with the awareness creation? Before you answer that, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll take your response. This is Women's Voice. Today on the program, we are looking at obstetric fistula, a condition, a medical condition that affects many women, especially here in Ghana. If you have a text message or a comment or a question you'd like to pose to our guest here in the studio, you'd like to contribute to this discussion, the number is 0245780116. It's up on your screen. Or my guest in the studio is Dr. Gabriel Ganyaglo. He is an obstetrician gynecologist at Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. We'll be right back. Do stay with us. Welcome back. This is Women's Voice. Today on the program, we are discussing obstetric fistula, a condition that affects women after childbirth. It's a condition that makes it difficult for women to control feces or urine whenever they feel the urge. My guest in the studio as we're discussing this subject is Dr. Gabriel Ganyaglo. He is a fistula surgeon with the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, giving us some perspective on this. You're talking about awareness creation, and you yourself have been involved in educating people over the years. The question I was asking before the break was that, what's the awareness creation meant to achieve in all of this?
Good. We have a two-pronged approach to solving or eliminating fistula. Now, create awareness so that those who are suffering from it, who may get a chance to hear us, will understand that it is not their making, and therefore and also understand that help is available, and that the help is not with the herbalist or the spiritualist. They have to go to hospital. That is the first objective.
Right.
The second is for those who have the financial wherewithal, who will hear it, to understand that it costs money to treat these people, and we know our government alone cannot do it. Our health sector budget is itself challenged with a lot of important issues. It's the priority lists are long, and so we need some philanthropy, we need charity, we need people to come in. It should not be left only to the multinational agencies like UNFPA that have championed the cause of ending fistula globally for several years now. So awareness creation is aimed at first encouraging people to go to hospitals when they're pregnant, and if things don't go well, you have fistula, just understand that it's not your making and help is available. And then the bottom line is those who have the financial muscle and will be willing to help should come to our aid and support us to look after these women, because they are victims of a system and it is not their making at all.
Is there a fund that is supposed to help?
Yes, the Ghana Health Service has an obstetric fistula fund.
Right.
And this fund is able to give us some support to look for the patients, mobilize them, and then get them into hospitals for treatment. The UNFPA, by and large, has also been very supportive, but I have to admit that since we became middle income, we've lost the support that, or not that we've lost it, but there's a reduction in the quantum of money that goes into fistula activities from the UNFPA. Now, only last night they launched the 100 in 100 days project, where we are targeting to repair 100 fistulas within the next 100 days. and it will cost money to go and look for the fistula patients. We have to send teams out there to organize daybeds in communities, educate the communities about fistula, and then you will find invariably that after every dayby, you get 1 or 2 patients coming out. And nearly every patient or every fistula patient can tell you where another fistula patient is.
Right.
So we use the repaired clients sometimes as the focal people to seek where others are. And all this costs money to organize. And so we need the support of, I must say, philanthropy by and large, to a very large extent. I mean, the churches understand charity better than the corporate entities. So my appeal, using your medium, if allowed, would be to encourage the churches to consider setting aside a certain percentage of donations towards the care of fistula patients, because these are the unfortunate victims of a health system that is failing them.
Well, if anyone wants to contribute to the fund, how do they do it?
Yes, at the moment, once they get in touch with the Family Health Division of the Ghana Health Service, the modalities are there. We are in the process of creating a hotline for such donations, and then also for notification of cases of fistula wherever they've been found. So yes, there's a lot of drive towards establishing.
But the person has to physically be present to...
Not necessarily in this era of
because in
mobile
this
money.
era of mobile money,
sure, that's
it should be very easy to just
the
send
process
some money
is
via
evolving.
mobile
You
money.
know, it has to go through the National Communication Authority, get
Right.
approval, get the funding, the auditing, accounting for it, and all. Everything has to be set up so that at the end of the day, those who donate the money can see the effect of their money. And so we are in the process of doing that. But once we are at this, there is nothing wrong with deciding that, oh, it costs about, let's say, 3,000 cedis to repair one fistula. I am capable of trying to repairing one. And so you...
Is that how much it costs?
It costs about 3,000 cedis just for the surgery. We are not talking here about going to search for the patient and then taking the patient back into the community. Just one patient in front of you in hospital, beginning to end. The resources that go in is
including recovery?
Including recovery. It's about 3,000 cedis. So we've taken out, or this estimate takes out a lot of peripheral expenditures that go into fistula care. So if we have a few people deciding that they would like to maybe fund the repair of 1, 2, 3, 4, well, maybe a tip of the iceberg, but it's also helping to reduce those who already have it. Now, you mentioned earlier that fistula is not common in some parts of the world. It's just because emergency obstetric services are available. Preventive measures are there. Family planning is the key if you ask about prevention. So let us encourage every woman to make sure that every pregnancy is wanted in the first place.
But since your education and awareness creation is focusing on prevention as well,
yes,
it also has to do with us putting together the kind of health structures that will support these women and support society, so that we are actually working at preventing it.
Yes.
Because if you put a CHIPS compound in a community, and there are many, and yet you find, apart from probably a thermometer or something else, a scale, there's nothing else, or paracetamol, and that's it. How is an expectant mother expected to get help from such a place?
Yeah, the CHIPS compounds are supposed to be points of contact in the community.
But they are the nearest.
Yes, and that serves as referral points. So once you can make contact with them, then you are moved to the next level. The difficulty is
getting to the next level.
Getting to the next level and making the decision that I have to go to the CHIPS compound in the first place. We have a situation where we are still very much traditional, extremely superstitious, and hold on to our beliefs, which is just us, Africa. So it's not very easy to even make a step to the CHIPS compound, which is still in the community. But unless we do the education and education and education, we will continue to have this vicious cycle of fistula.
Okay, interesting. When you go into these communities, what kind of feedback do you get, especially about the myths surrounding and the mentality surrounding fistula?
Oh, I talk to them a lot, and some of the stories will break your heart. It's just their understanding of it. okay, a woman is in labor, or let's say she's pregnant. Everybody gets pregnant and gets delivered, so God is responsible for the labor, full stop. There's nothing beyond that. So she goes into labor expecting that she will deliver. There's no clue what can go wrong. Now, when things start going wrong, they have no concept of what is a bad sign or what shows that this baby is too big. You see, in obstetrics and midwifery, if the woman is less than a certain height, like 1.5 meters, once she's less than that, you expect that if this baby is average size, there will be trouble. So you don't encourage such a person to even deliver in a maternity home. The midwives will send you away. And they do a lot. The midwives do a lot to prevent obstetric fistula. So that we still have such numbers tells you that there is so much education that is absent in our dialogue with the community, the rural areas. You see, we are focusing on the rural areas because they form the majority. But just across the streets from Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, a woman is in labor and goes to the spiritualist, the spiritual home, to deliver, loses the baby and gets a fistula. This is Accra. So the belief system is strong that it will take education and education and education. That is why when we repair the fistula clients, we try to organize them into advocates, because they have been through it, they have experienced it, they have gone the full circle. And so they will be one of our best advocates. But because they are so stigmatized, they don't even want to go back into the community. Now, once the stigma is there, even after repair, they are still not readily accepted into the communities. That is why we have a program called reintegration. And it also costs money. First, you have to repair the patient, rehabilitate the person, and reintegrate them into society so they can be economically self-sufficient and economically empowered. Otherwise, they won't go back. Once they have been tagged as cursed and tagged as having fistula, even after repairs, they are not accepted. So it's a burden that requires a lot of financial input. It's a burden that requires a lot of support. Some people can even volunteer to bring food to the patients after surgery on the ward. Sometimes we go to the northern areas, deprived communities. The women have worked on food 3 days to meet the surgeon. They have not eaten much. You finish the surgery, you know that this patient's surgery will break down or fail if you don't feed the patient. The hospitals are not feeding them. What do? You dip your hand in your own pocket to get them food because you work so hard. You don't want your work to be in vain. So sometimes we have to make provision for their upkeep on the ward. So it becomes a full complex charity organization. But what will it take for, say, the district assembly to get a group of farmers to donate maybe tubers of yam or some tomatoes to the hospital for the upkeep of fistula patients? If we are all committed and we all understand the plight of these women, we will not wait for government. And I don't think it should take government. There's enough goodwill in us that if we understand the problem, all of us can put our heads together in our various small ways. I mean, the good book says you should brighten the corner where you are, and it's more blessed to give than to receive. So I do believe that in the end, if we are able to get a lot of our people to understand, I mean, and I keep saying that the churches, I assume, will understand charity more than corporate entities that probably exist more for profit. So let's get our churches to be on our side. And I have to mention that we do have the Cardinal Texan Fund in Mankasim that also supported fistula care for a very long time. There are challenges now with the fund because a lot of those who put money into it, I mean, once you become middle income, the freebies are curtailed. So you have some small.
What about raising funds locally?
Yes, that is
having a huge fundraising.
Good.
Maybe on the day that is set aside to commemorate fistula.
Yes.
Raising funds and getting people to contribute.
Yes, I think UNFPA started something similar yesterday. I mean, last night at Alisa when they launched the 100 in 100 initiative. Of course, UNFPA cannot go fundraising in the host country. So they will sensitize all of you that, yes, we want to repair 100 fistulas in 100 days, but it costs money to do it. So if you are interested, please come on board. Let's mobilize resources and go and repair 100 fistulas in 100. Now, this is the initiative of UNFPA.
Right.
It would be nice to have similar initiatives coming from other organizations. It could be the telecommunications giants. It could be the financial institutions. It could be, my favorite example, the churches, whatever women's groups, whatever groups we have. All of us coming on board to say, okay, we want to support the repair of 50 fistula patients. We want to support the repair of 20 fistula patients. Look, as we speak, my very old professors are the ones trekking up and down the country, global communities, trying to raise funds to support the work of.
But since you started this work, are we seeing the numbers getting better, or we are seeing it get worse? The number of cases.
And so long as we don't prevent new cases from forming, our numbers will continue to get worse. Either they are staying the same or they'll get worse. The key is to prevent new ones from forming and repair the old ones.
In any case, we have a good record-keeping system where we can really record all the number of cases that are coming in.
It is difficult to count fistula. That is the first challenge. But I believe we are improving in the sense that the Ghana Health Service has set up a data capture system, the DIMS1, DIMS2.
Right.
That served as the basis for us even knowing how many new cases we get every year. And the service also set up a tax team to address the subject of fistula. And this service, the Ghana Health Service, commissioned a study which also told us how much, or the burden of disease. It also went ahead to set up a committee to look at strategies for preventing and managing fistula in Ghana. And so we have 2 working documents that we are using now. So yes, it's a complex issue, needs a multifaceted approach to solving it, but the Ghana Health Service is also not resting on its oars. They are always on us to do 1 or 2, and UNFPA has always been in the background giving the technical support, and wherever we need resources in terms of theater beds or surgical instruments, they are always ready to supply us. And most of the instruments we use around the country today have been supplied by the UNFPA for repair of fistula.
Okay. This one says, thank you, Selikem, for the education. Your guest is very good. Please ask if they have tried educating churches about this situation. Okay, maybe because you mentioned churches.
She shares my
have
mind. You see, we are on the same frequency. Yes.
Have you tried to do any collaboration?
I think the Catholic Mission has done a lot, particularly the Archdiocese of Cape Coast. I have to mention that.
Right.
They've done a lot. They use their church programs and their women's fellowship and women's groupings for a lot of fistula education. I can say for sure, because I've seen letters also coming from the Archdiocese of Ho regarding fistula work. So yes, the Catholic Church, I have to admit, is in the forefront on the battle against fistula. But I cannot say much for the others. And it would be nice to get a lot of the charismatic churches also on board, since it appears to me that they have the bigger charity capacity.
Right, okay, this one says, your program is very good. I'm a retired midwife and I went into labor my first time and I was mishandled in the labor ward. I was there for 3 days and doctors were coming to review cases, but no midwife told the doctor about me. The third day I gave birth. The looks better. Okay, all right. Let me just try and make sense of what you're saying. The third day I gave birth, I was given an episiotomy and I was not educated on how to take care of the wound. So I was sitting on warm water and the wound gapped or opened. I had to take care of myself till it got healed. I lost the baby 2 weeks later and I learned it was due to delayed delivery. So this is somebody, okay, you didn't add your name, but this scenario here, what do you make of it?
This is about the quality of care. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time encouraging the women to come to hospitals to deliver.
And she's talking about this happening in the hospital.
Now, when they arrive in hospital, it is for us to ensure that they get the right quality of care. Quality of care also includes timely care. So if there's a delay, and this delay must not be one attributable to the health worker. Sometimes there are systemic issues that result in this delay. This is not common, I must admit. It is not particularly the situation where a woman is deliberately abandoned in labor in the hospital setting. So I'm not sure what the scenario was that the doctors could not be, the doctor's attention was not drawn to her in this particular scenario. So I think the quality of care is an issue, but that is clearly squarely on us to address.
Exactly. As health professionals, do you feel that the kind of health communication that you provide for women, especially when they're in labor, is up to the standard? Because you find that in most cases, women are abused and mistreated in so many ways, just because they're in labor.
Right. I think that we are almost shifting focus, but it's important because somebody has sent it as a WhatsApp. Now, the management of labor requires a lot of tact, a lot of training, both for the patient and the health worker.
Right.
What I find missing in our setting, and this is my opinion on this, is that we don't bring labor uppermost during antenatal care. We don't alert our women on what they should expect, how they should behave, or what they should tell us, not necessarily how they should behave. But we need to have a discussion before they go into labor. We need to even take them on a tour of the labor ward so the anxiety is less. And so when they are in labor, they know that it is a stressful situation, but hey, if I make this effort, it could be less. And if I call my physician's attention, I will get X, Y, and Z. Or if I call the midwife's attention, I'll get to so and so done. Labor can be managed with epidural analgesia or occasional pain relief being given. That to make it comfortable. It doesn't always take away the pain completely.
Right.
But once we raise the subject and discuss it before the onset of labor, the patient is mentally prepared and psyched up to go through it. But when you miss this preparation before they go into labor, then they can behave in any way. And unfortunately, sometimes you find that, particularly with the younger ones, they also get anxious. Most of what we complain about as bad behavior of health workers is their anxiety to get things right. Their effort to make sure mother is safe, baby is safe, is sometimes what drives them to that level.
But oftentimes, there seems to be a gap when it comes to communicating to the patients what they are going through and understanding the dynamics of how things are going to unfold. To the extent that when patients even ask questions, sometimes the kind of response they get is very unwelcoming.
We are all fingers are not the same.
Okay, this one says, good afternoon to you all. Fistula is real. I think we need more education in the country, especially in our villages. Mankesim Queen Mother is helping to fight it free of charge. This is coming from Dad from Awushi. All right. Okay. So in terms of fighting this holistically and moving forward, what are we going to do differently this time around?
I believe we should make it clear that every pregnancy should be wanted. Because my understanding, or for me, the principle is if the pregnancy is not wanted and it ends you in fistula, it's most unfortunate. If a pregnancy is not wanted and it takes away the mother's life, it's an unnecessary death. Family planning is not expensive. I believe the cheapest way to prevent fistula is family planning promotion. And we have to get family planning acceptance to a level where people can pick it up across the counters without feeling any guilt or stigma for doing that. Our family planning uptake levels are rather low, so we end up with lots of pregnancies that are unwanted in the first place. Then we are very religious about abortion. Although our laws permit it under certain circumstances, we have lots of beliefs around it, so it's not widely available. Though comprehensive abortion care or comprehensive services are available in all Ghana Health Service centers. Now the pregnancy is on, then you don't go for antenatal care. Or you go for antenatal care, but you choose not to deliver in the hospital. So if once you set yourself on that track, it becomes very, very difficult. The thing is that most of those we see or count as fistula today are the lucky ones who didn't die. Because this is exactly the same track that maternal mortality follows. Everything that culminates in the death of the woman, if she's fortunate not to die, can cause fistula. or maim her for life with other complications. So you find that everything, the journey to fistula is not different from the journey to maternal death. And so if we are able to get all pregnancies to be wanted and all pregnancies seen by a skilled attendant antenatally and the delivery by a skilled attendant, then we will be probably 50% through preventing it.
On that note, your concluding remarks.
I believe that we will have fistula with us for some time, given the complexity of the issues and the multifaceted nature of its solution. And so we will still continue to plead on all to empathize with the patient. Don't shun them. It is not their making. And those who have the financial wherewithal should consider putting their resources into the care of fistula patients.
Thank you very much, Doc, for being on the program and giving
welcome.
us so much education.
Thank you.
This has been Women's Voice. We've been looking at obstetric fistula. My guest in the studio has been Dr. Gabriel Ganyaglo. He is obstetrician gynecologist with the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital and also fistula surgeon, sharing his thoughts here with us. Our inspirational quote today will come right from our guest, and he says that fistula is preventable. The cheapest way to prevent fistula is family planning, unquote. My name is Selikem Acolatse Apaloo. Let's do this again, same time tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching.
It's about exposing the vulnerabilities women face.
You have to go to an occasion and people will be like, okay, look at this scary lady coming up. And it was so devastating for me at that time. And I just feel like, okay, if this is how the situation is going to be, then I have to accept myself. I have to embrace what I am.
It's about being ready to speak out for our own rights.
If you see a nice girl, then the assumption is that she enticed the man. What was she wearing? My dear, it does not matter what a young girl is wearing. It is not enough grounds for you to rape the girl.
We are always striving to reach the top, no matter what.
Every woman must know that she has a deep-seated strength. That strength that can put her over every hurdle. And that strength should actually encourage you to do more than you think you can do.
We are frank about who we are.
We all have something, no matter where you find yourself. Let somebody remember you for something good, because you need to put yourself on the line, because some people have done it so that you can go to school, so you can have a voice, just to make sure that women's voices could be heard.
And in today's world, we do have a say.
Actually, they are dead drunk. We do have a voice. With that voice, we can change the world. With that voice, we can take command of our broken communities.
Women's Voice, weekdays on GBC 24 at 4 p.m. and on Mondays on GTV at 4 p.m. Women's Voice, articulating the issues affecting women and sharing their unique stories with the rest of the world.